popular joke that I often heard in my medical school days was about the fourth year medical student who was applying for a surgical residency. When the attending advised him that his call would be every other night during his intern year, the student responded that he was utterly disappointed. When the attending asked him why he felt that way, was that now he would miss half the cases. And whether that story is true or not, it goes to this idea is that medical school wants to build students who are hardworking, workaholics, high-achieving perfectionists. And that can lead to a really dark road and often lead into burnout and trying to attain something that is unattainable. And that's what happened to my next guest. This was a professional ballet dancer in her teen years who then became a well-respected physician. And although on the outside it looked like the perfect doctor we would want to have, inside things were crumbling down. We discuss her journey, how she overcame her personal demons, and now teaches others to live the life that they deserve. My interview with Dr. Kara Pepper on this episode of Bootstrap MD. Hey guys, Dr. Mike Wiming. Welcome to another edition of Bootstrap MD. We're continuing our series where we're spotlighting physician coaches who are in the trenches and helping so many people. And I'm super excited. I've heard this name for a while now, and she is probably one of the most predominant life coaches that I know there, but she talks about other subjects that I don't think too many life coaches really discuss, and we'll get into it. She's a practicing primary care internist who underwent burnout, but she rebuilt her life and career. She now focuses on coaching that is forward-facing, evidence-based, helping high-achieving perfectionists. I guess some physicians may be high-achieving perfectionists that are undergoing burnout and are looking for career transition. She provides one-on-one coaching, lead retreats, and she speaks about topics surrounding burnout, perfectionism, imposter syndrome, wellness, and career transition. She also is involved in group coaching, and she's got one for women physicians that she'll have on September 12th, and we'll talk about soon. But I'd like to introduce to the show Dr. Kara Pepper. Kara, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
All right. Well, I gave that quick introduction, but I kind of just stumbled right through it. So I always like it best to hear it from the person who experienced this. Tell us about your journey from internist to coach. I probably something that you didn't plan on when you went into medical school, I guess.
Definitely not. None of this was really in my plans. My original plan was to be a professional ballet dancer, which I was straight out of high school, and loved it, but ultimately had career-ending injuries due to an underlying eating disorder. And so found my way into medicine. And, you know, dancers and doctors are the same people. They're lifelong learners. They are high achieving. They are workaholics. And so I brought all of my perfectionism and workaholism with me into a career in medicine. Ultimately became a primary care internist, which I love. It's like solving puzzles all day long, but just got epically burned out. So I took a sabbatical, then came back to my practice after finding coaching because it helped me really clear up all that burnout mindset that I was in. And I'm still practicing there today. And so along the way, became a coach really to help other physicians who are struggling with those same issues, burnout and perfectionism.
I want to talk about it a little bit more and just kind of delve into it. And I don't might mean to get personal, but, you know, burnout, people experience burnout, you know, for different reasons in medicine. What in particular in burnout, and again, I hate to come to a time which is probably not the most pleasant for you. What were some areas that you felt burnt out in?
Well, you know, work was really my drug of choice. You know, when we don't feel good, we always find ways to feel better. And so some people eat and some people drink. For me, it was working. And so it was easy to feel good about the work that I was doing, but also avoid all the things that were problematic for me. And so at that season of my life, I joined a high achieving practice, wanted to be a great doctor to my patients, had no boundaries, and really felt like over delivering care was the way to practice. I had a spouse who traveled full time with his career. I had 2 young children, and there's just not enough hours in the day to be everything to everyone. And so I basically worked myself into a place where I felt like I was failing, and I was really ashamed of that all the time. And I clearly thought everyone else had their act together, when in reality, we know that's not true. We're all just trying to make it. And so I really got to a place where I just couldn't get out of bed anymore. And so I said, I need to ask for help, which was a really hard thing for me as the person who had all the answers to do.
As a doctor, I wasn't used to asking for help, especially when it came to subjects outside of medicine. But then I found physiciancoaches.com. In an instant, I found hundreds of experts to help me in all aspects of life. On areas I was afraid to ask: dealing with burnout, starting a side gig, money management, even help with my marriage. And the best part? Nearly all experts are physicians themselves. After reading their profile and a quick chat, I knew I found the right mentor for me. At physiciancoaches.com, help from professional colleagues is just a click away.
Now, it sounds like you learn from your ballet training, and you understand about this, having this, being in a world where performance is everything, lots of demands to yourself. But was it just like you woke up one day and you decided to do it, or were there people telling you, hey, you can't be doing this? Were there any circumstances like that
That told me that I could not keep working in the state of burnout?
Yeah, you cannot. Yeah, were there, for example, for me, it was my wife who says, you can't keep doing this, anymore. I'm seeing you, and you are not the person that you were. I'm irritable. I'm angry. I'm, dreading. I would have an awful remark is like, "Oh, it's a Monday. I can't. I might be joking about it, but I was like, I'm dreading coming in." Were there anybody that surrounded you, or did you colleagues or family member that, because it's oftentimes you don't know what it is, or talk about, or maybe you did.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I knew I didn't feel great, that was for sure, but I was pretty numb. I'd just been working to that place of feeling nothing. And often people would say, like, wow, you've got a husband who's not home and 2 young kids at home, and you're working 60 plus hours a week. How do you do that? And what I would hear was not, wow, that's so much, you should really take care of yourself. What I heard was, clearly, if I could just work harder, I wouldn't feel like this. It's like the perfectionist fantasy. If I could just do enough, I can feel okay about myself, and then I won't have to have this judgment or criticism, and then I can be okay. But we never reached that enoughness, right? So there was no amount of work that ever made me feel better. It just continued to avalanche to this place where I simply could not keep up with what I was doing anymore.
Yeah.
Yes, there's people all around me saying, what is going on with you? But I wasn't willing to hear it at the time.
I definitely resonate with that. For me, I was in a group practice, but it was more of a, this is how it is. This is the way medicine is these days, and you either got to suck it up and kind of be a team player, and that's how it was, and that's not how I envisioned. So I think it takes so much courage to just say enough's enough, and leave, and unfortunately, there are many physicians that are out there that never get to that point and don't even realize that they have an option for that.
That's right.
When did you decide to say? So you burnt out. How long were you away from medicine?
Yeah, so I was in my 7th year of practice, and I had a good mentor who I went to and said, I need help. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I can't do this anymore. And he said, you need a leave of absence, like a year. And I was like, oh no, I was thinking like a week right. Vacation, and I'll be okay, as if that had ever fixed anything, right? And so he said, well, you need at least 6 months. And so the longest I could have fathomed taking time off was a maternity leave. So I took 6 weeks for a sabbatical. Now, me now, I look at that and it's laughable. I mean, at the time, I bought myself enough time to not feel like I was on fire. I certainly wasn't well when I came back. I certainly wasn't anti-burned out. I didn't feel great, but it really just spotlights that mindset of I can't ask for help. It feels like failure to take time off. I'm failing my partners. I'm failing my patients. So that massive sabbatical that seems like it was a long time was only 6 weeks.
Yeah, that is. So, was this person in your organization? Was he somebody close? Because it's very, I think that's rare, don't you think, for someone in that position to say, "Hey, just take a year off." So,
yeah, exactly.
That's some insight.
Exactly. And so, as it turned out, he had taken time off, a year off, when he was about 40. And he had done some healthcare adjacent work and then come back to the practice. But had I not had that one voice that I trusted and respected to say, hey, I'm worried about you. I get it in the way that I understand you. And I'm worried enough that I really want to nudge you to do something outside your comfort zone. I don't know that I would have ever done it. I probably would have just quit my job and never returned to medicine, because that really was the fantasy I was having at the time. Let me just move home to Florida and open a yoga studio, because anything is better than doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. Luckily, that person was in your life, and again, I think that's pretty rare. So commend your organization that you had that. So it's been a year, and you got a date when you're supposed to come back to work. How are you feeling? Was it feeling a dread? Were you feeling like, hey, I got this, I'm ready to come back? Clue me in about what was your mindset at the time?
Oh, I was definitely not okay when I came out of that 6 weeks away from work. I was functioning as a human, but I wasn't well, right? And so I'm really grateful to be a part of a practice that said, we value you and we want you here. Tell us what you need in order to be successful. And so I unwound my 60+ hour a week schedule to 4 days a week part-time, like 4 truncated days. And so it allowed me to be able to, practice, but actually still have some brain space. And honestly, it was probably 2 solid years before I felt like myself. I mean, in that window of time, I certainly continued to see my therapist. But as I mentioned, I found coaching in that window and started with a coach. And those 2 things synergistically for me really helped me own what was mine to own and the suffering that I was creating for myself, and really define what I needed to continue to practice medicine, which is really what I wanted to do. I couldn't envision a way forward without their help.
Now, as you know, we created physiciancoaches.com so doctors can find coaches more easier. But back then, how did you find a coach? Were you referred? Did you just go online? What was the process for you?
So there are some pioneers in the physician coaching world, and one is Kathy Steppen, who does a lot of wellness retreats. So I went to hers in Miraval, which is spectacular. Everyone should go. And I was first introduced to coaching in that window. And I thought, wow, this really feels like something I could do, and also the shift that I really need. And there's a woman, Diane Ansari Wynn, who runs Physician Coaching Academy. She teaches physicians how to coach physicians, a very specific focus. And I said, that's exactly what I want. And so between those 2, I was able to open my door to training to be a coach. And in the background of all that, there's a third woman, Erin Weissman, who is the leader of Physician Coaching Alliance now. But she was like grassroots, gathering up all this kind of ragtag team of coaches and saying, hey, we've got something here. There's such a huge community of us. Let's get together and help each other through peer coaching, through business, through entrepreneurship. And so it's through those 3 women that this kind of whole world got open to me. And now here I am.
Yeah, as you see this, because I know Erin, I'm picturing she's got a rope that she's lassoing everybody together, and if anyone knows, we've had her on the show, and she is certainly one of a kind. So you decided to open your doors. So what time was that? You said it was about 2.5 years ago? Yes,
I got certified in early 2019 and started coaching then. It's been about 2.5 years.
So how did you get your first clients? How did they find you? Did you start marketing it? Did you open a store?
Yeah, at the time, my vision was that I would probably just integrate coaching into my clinical practice. And I was practicing, quote, practicing coaching, getting my coaching hours, just in the circle of people I knew, my partners, physician friends. And so that first year was just it felt more like a hobby. And I mean that in an endearing sense. It was really just fun and creative and exploratory for me. It was something for me that I'd never really done before. And I had never opened my own business. So it was really just a process of learning and creativity, which I really loved. And then through that, I started getting paying clients by the end of that year. And then the second year was 2020, which then COVID happened. And so particularly because I coach around burnout and perfectionism, and I'd done some second victim work, I really built my client base at that point in time with a lot of one-on-one clients, and then started doing group coaching out of that kind of cohort of people who really were struggling with perfectionism. And so I've kind of found my way as, the classic general internist. I coach everyone on everything. And then my focus has gotten narrower and narrower. So now like the perfectionistic, high achieving, self-doubting women, generally those are my people. I love them. So that I end up doing a lot of group coaching around that.
That brings up a couple of questions that just off the top. You said that you wanted to integrate coaching, with your clinical work. Now, having interviewed coaches, I've seen that where it's something that they've done at work and they integrate coaching. And then I know that there's some coaches who are like, I'm doing this completely separate from my hospital. They would rather me not know. Not like I'm hiding, but they would rather me not be associated with that. How did it work for you? It sounded like, obviously you had to disclose that you're doing this. Well, was that a difficult question to ask, whether you could do this or not, or did they embrace it?
I think it was on time because my hospital system that owns my practice was looking to start some wellness work. So it was part of the general conversation, so well received in that way. But I very clearly, through my non-compete contract, just had to disclose like coaching is very separate than practicing medicine. It's not remotely the same thing, and that was also that hurdle was crossed. In terms of like integrating it with my practice, as an internist, like it is really, I would argue that every physician really is a coach. It's how we educate, it's how we encourage, it's how we motivate our patients. And so, it didn't take me long in clinical practice to know that if I had a diabetic, I could hand them more insulin, or I could start to unwrap the onion and try to figure out like, why are they struggling with diabetes? And then maybe it's because they have emotional eating. And then maybe it's because they have a history of trauma. And then you start to unwind. So really it gets to this place of exploration, which feels very similar to coaching for me. So motivating patients for behavioral change is we're all coaches. That's what I think every physician listening is.
Remember when you could practice medicine on your own terms? What if you could take control of your physician career, make more money while working smarter, not harder? Pick up your copy of The Positioned Physician. Earn more, work smart, and love medicine again. Now updated for 2021, The Positioned Physician details one doctor's journey from burnt-out employee to successful entrepreneur. Whether you are in residency, in mid-career, or close to retirement, after reading The Positioned Physician, you'll gain the knowledge that can strategically impact your doctor life. The Positioned Physician, now available on Amazon Kindle and paperback.
So you said like the first year you kind of treat it as a hobby, and then, realize you got to treat it as a business. You're getting paying coaches. You want to make sure that you are helping paying clients. You want to make sure that you are helping them as best you can as you are. When did you start to think, hey, maybe I should start doing group coaching? Because I know a number of one-on-one coaching, they're looking into group coaching. And how did that process, how did that unfold?
So the question that I always want to answer for my clients is like, what do they need right now? How are they feeling? How can I best serve them, right? I never really went into coaching because I'm still practicing full time. I never went into coaching thinking, hey, I want to, have this multi-six-figure business. It really was like, how can I use this as another line of service? And so through the COVID crisis early on, I started to do some group work, just small, mostly in line of support and doing group coaching, which is how I kind of cut my teeth in that. But towards the end of 2020, when everyone was so exhausted and thinking like, hopefully 2021 will feel like a fresh new start.
Sure.
The question that I kept asking myself was like, what do I need? Like COVID was a big awakening for me. I was living my best life during those COVID months, working from home, doing telemedicine. And that really resonated with a lot of my coaching clients. What is next for you? What do you want to define? What do you know about yourself? How did you outgrow this vision that you started out, at the age of 20? How does that fit or not fit you anymore? So this concept of like redefining life on your own terms and not living for everyone else's expectations and really starting to value yourself in a different way. That was really the core principle behind what's next. And so I just said, let me put this out there and see. And believe me, there's lots of early entrepreneurial, jitters, like, what am I doing? This is a big undertaking, but it was really well received. I have this amazing community of women who participated, and the perfectionist piece of things really resonated. And so then I moved into more perfectionist group coaching. So that's what I am.
So let's talk about it. Let's talk about this perfectionism. So you probably have an idea, but let's talk about it in your clients. What have you found, and what are the struggles that we have with perfectionism?
Well, it's a loaded question. I could talk forever, but I think probably the most salient point to remember is that perfectionism is a hindering behavior. Like, we all think that being a perfectionist means doing things perfectly, and if I could just be perfect, I could feel okay. It is not the same as high achieving. High achieving has a very different curiosity, determination, learning feel to it, whereas perfectionism really gets down to a place of worth. If I can do more, be more, I can feel okay about myself. And so in healthcare, although this doesn't apply to everyone, many of us work and feel good about the work we're doing because it's a service to the world around us. But that can be a very slippery slope to how a good doctor should behave, the rules behind the implicit training that we get, right? You should be everything to your patients all the time, never say no to a colleague, always be available to your patients. And it really then becomes this very slippery slope down to burnout. So they're very tightly linked in my mind.
So there's lots of, causes for perfectionism. Yes, we want to do what's best for our patients. On the other hand, a lot of times what we do in perfectionism is really kind of CYA. We don't want a lawsuit. We don't want to. So we've got to, that's certainly a factor. Also, there are things that, we're one of the few occupations, it's life and death, right? If one thing goes wrong, we could cause someone to die. How do we overcome these feelings of perfectionism? Because as I know, people who are perfectionists. I am myself a perfectionist. We all are to some extent, so we probably wouldn't be here. What we know is that you just can't shut it off in medicine, right? It applies into our own lives, into our regular lives, and our spouses feel it. Our kids are feeling it. The way we live, we just can't get it. What are the ways that we might find that we have warning signs, let's say, in perfectionism, and what are the best ways to overcome it? I assume coaching.
Yeah. So part of it is, I think the surgeons have a very great expression around this, which is perfect is the enemy of good, right? And so this idea that we have to be A+ all the time is just simply not a realistic standard. And I think that saying really illustrates the fact that the self-doubt, the self-criticism, the procrastination, that I have to be good enough and do enough piece of mindset of perfectionism really can actually hinder your progress, hinder you from moving forward, hinder you from being able to make a decision and stick with it. So that constant self-doubt that's there is really at the core of perfectionism. So part of it is just recognizing, is this showing up for you? And I'll just give you a really practical example. It's charting is probably the most accessible way to see if you're a perfectionist, right? What do you believe about your notes? What does it say about you? And so the perfectionist will say, I've got to write in prose. I have to have all the details. It has to be organized the right way. What will people think if they read this note and it has typos in it? And so the classic procrastinating perfectionist that's always trying to like make everything A+ work often ends up with charting errors or charts that are piling up at the end of the week. And so they're never able to actually get through them. So recognizing if this is showing up is always the first step, just noticing. And then secondly, there's some very practical tools around that. So we often talk about B+ work, or some people will say B- work. Like none of us ever want to be B+ students, right? We were raised to be A+ students. That's how we got through all the training. But really focusing your energy on what matters, like arguably with direct patient care or with your coaching clients or with your family, like showing up and being present is the goal, right? Like having typos in your notes or doing bullet points in your notes or using auto text replace, like those are shortcuts to just get the busyness out of the way. So my point is recognizing where your energy really needs to go and then stop focusing on the things that are really distracting you from your goals. That would be a very brief intro into ways that we can stop piling up charts at the end of the week, right?
I know there's so many ways to look at it. And I think also just recognizing like, there are activities that you want to be the best that you can. Let's say you're doing, open heart surgery, versus, notes that, follow-up notes, or just like, I don't know, like putting the garbage away or like some mundane character. But sometimes if you have that personality, everything has to be right. And I don't know how that's driven. It's almost like, I was like, I give an example. So I was like a spelling bee champion, okay, in like 4th grade. And like, if I see a misspelling, I can't like I have to correct it. Like I have to stop what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh, I can't read more because they're like, but let's say I'm looking for someone to fix my car. But if there's a misspelling, right? I'm saying, well, they're horrible, right? If they don't know how to spell, I don't know, carburetor correctly, then I'm not going to go to them. And they might have 5-star reviews, but I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if you've explored, is there something in our brain that we are trying, like who cares? Like, we think about it, it's like, I don't really care. But I'm trying to please somebody. I don't know if you've experienced something like that, or you discussed this. Where does this perfectionism come from?
Right. So part of it is that there is no such thing as perfect, right? We can strive for it. We can work towards it. But this idea that there is perfect out there that is actually achievable and that we can like stand on the top of the mountain and say, today was perfect. Yes. It may be transient in the moment, but the permanent state of perfectionism or permanent state of perfect doesn't work. And so part of it, I like that you mentioned this word pleasing, like so much of it is really comes down to worth. And so if we think, well, if everything looks okay on the outside, if I can make other people happy, if I can serve people in the right way, then I can feel okay about myself. And so that people pleasing behavior is another one that shows up in perfectionists, because we think if we can just control everything around us, then we can feel okay. But it always gets back to like, how can I be okay with exactly the imperfect, messy person I am? And that doesn't mean we shouldn't stop striving for excellence. It doesn't mean we shouldn't care about our patients. It doesn't mean we shouldn't take time and detailed work in what we do. But the difference is allowing for self-compassion, allowing to feel feelings like shame when we make mistakes, allowing failure to be data collection and not like a statement about who we are as people. And so it's a much more compassionate way to live when we say, you know what, I'm always doing the best that I can, but my best may look different day to day. There is no such thing as perfect.
I know, and working with entrepreneurs, like let's say, for example, I had one client where it took forever to get his website up because he wanted to, format it correctly. And then when I look at his website, he says, "Don't you see what I'm seeing here? This is off to the left by 10 degrees." And what happens is they never launch it because it completely blocks them. And I'm going, and I'm sitting there, why is he doing this? But, I've seen that in myself. It's like, oh man, I'm sending out this email. And then I realized I put a semicolon instead of a hyphen here, and it's not the proper English. No one cares. Nobody really cares. But
I'll tell you a good example of that. I was sending out an email on a workshop on perfectionism, I think it was. And it had a link to the replay. And I sent it out to my entire mailing list, and the link was broken. Someone emailed me back. So I said, okay, so I corrected the link, and I sent the second email later in the day and said, excuse me for, whatever, I apologize. Here's the new link. And the second link was broken to this lecture on perfectionism. And so someone emailed me. So a third time that day, I had to go back and I fixed the problem, and it worked. But it was so funny to me because the old me would have just been like, my business is ruined. This is terrible. No one's going to respect me. That would have been the narrative. Correct. Yes, I clearly don't deserve to do this, right? But I've done enough work around this just to recognize, like, I'm human. Like, I didn't do it on purpose. It just happens. This is part of it, right? I apologize and move on. But it was so funny, the feedback that I got from so many clients to say, was that like, were you testing us? Were you like showing us an example of how to be imperfect and like keep rolling with the punches? And I just thought it was like such an endearing, not just statement about the community of people that I coach, but also just like, here's the perfectionism coach, like modeling imperfection in real time, and also just demonstrating like self-compassion is the antidote always to the shame that we feel around not being perfect. So I just had to let it go.
Yeah, I'll give you another example. So I had my assistant, and we had a course that we're coming out, and the course, part of the coffee, it said something like, "You can't afford to miss this program," and somehow it wasn't communicated well, and she wrote, "You can't afford it," and it was sent out to like 3,000 people, and I still survived. We put it in a disclaimer. It was kind of a joke, but you know what? The sun rose the next day, and we, like you said, we're just human. Things will happen, and it just kind of shows a little bit more transparency too, for it. But yeah, we never can do that again. It'll happen again.
The point is, like, we're human, right? And to pretend that we will never have these experiences is unrealistic, right? And so there's never been a time more than now where we need to be able to like actually be human, show that we are embarrassed or ashamed, show that we're overwhelmed, show that we make mistakes and we get up and keep moving, right? And so much of the culture around medicine is we cannot have any emotion. We have to be perfect all the time, and we have to keep moving forward. And it really, I think, contributes to a lot of what you and I are seeing, where people are leaving healthcare to try to find other careers because it's just not sustainable to believe that we can never feel human again.
Exactly. And there's still that stigma out there that we still have. There's still, there's still people who don't recognize that we are, we're still on that pedestal, and we're not allowed to make mistakes. So it is, I still keep coming back to that person who told you, hey, it's okay to take time off. It's okay to get, your mental health back, because there's still, many organizations don't have that. I know you're busy, but I want to talk about the event that you're having coming up very soon, September 12th, this group coaching program. Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's group coaching, so live on Sundays for women physicians. There's 20 CME credits, so use your CME budget if you have that to come. You can add on one-on-one coaching if you choose to, but it is really meant to be a safe space for women who want to define what's next for them. If they're exhausted, if you're trying to think about career transition, if you want to talk about the real stuff that you talk to your girlfriends about, whether it's your body or your work or your aging parents or how to get ahead in charting, like, it really is a space where we work on the things that every woman is struggling with. So it's built around the question, how can we make life easier and more fun? And there's never been a time where we need some respite. So I'm so excited about it. It's going to be great.
Let's just talk about too, and they can go to your website to get more information.
Yes, absolutely. It's Kara with a K, K-A-R-A, peppermd.com.
Pepper.com. I want to talk about, because you've been working with the clients. I'd like to talk about what I just love to talk about, and that is their clients. Let's talk about some of the people that you've helped. Can you give us some examples?
Yes. So I work with trainees through attendings. Monthly, I do free coaching for residents and fellows, because I really, truly believe if we can get coaching in the hands of early career physicians, it will totally change their life. But particularly the folks that come to me are really struggling with, how can I feel better in this life I've worked really hard for? And so very rarely do I have people truly leave medicine. I do believe that the core values that brought people into healthcare still remain with them. It's just we get lost along the way. So really trying to rediscover and rekindle the love for themselves and the love for service is something that a lot of my clients end up going towards, but not always. I have folks who are making lateral health affiliate kind of careers. I have folks that are changing their life on their own terms to say, hey, I'm going to work part-time in this season of life. But it's really less about how they practice medicine, but how they start to love themselves and say, this is the life that is so short and I want to make the best of it. So that's a lot of the coaching work that we end up doing.
I love it. Okay. And like you said, you can't love medicine unless you love yourself.
Yep.
100%. Kara, thank you for joining us. Go to the website, carapepper.com.
carapeppermd.com. And you can find me on all social media at carapeppermd on all the platforms.
carapeppermd.com. Go in, check out her group coaching program that's coming out very quickly on September 12th. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Kara. I'm sure she'll be happy to answer your questions. Again, any last minute thoughts before we end the call today?
Remember that you are your most important patient, always, right? So our life doesn't have to be defined by the expectations that we started at 20. You're allowed to change your mind and take care of yourself exactly who you are right now.
That's great words, everyone. Again, thank you. If you're someone who's struggling out there and this interview resonated with you, reach out to Kara. I'm sure she'd like to hear more about what you can do and how she can help you. And for always, guys, thanks for listening. And as always, keep moving forward. All right. Other than my little mess up on your website, I think that was good.
Thank you so much. That's really good to put a face with a name. Thank you for all the work that you're doing to support physician entrepreneurs. Really, truly.
Yeah, this is good, and I love that you talk about perfectionism and I like the transition to group coaching. That can be pretty tough sometimes. Do you find that kind of like helps funnel your one-on-one, or you kind of your one-on-one, you just say, hey, I think you might be better?
I really would like to move away from one-on-ones. I mean, I like them. It's like how I kind of cut my teeth as a coach. But there is something magical about group coaching. I mean, it is like that same see one, do one, teach one thing that we learn in medicine. When you see someone who's struggling with the same thing that you're struggling with, it like totally changes the way you look at the problem. And so I find, I've got a call with a woman after I get off with you, who wants to do one-on-ones. And I find that I'm like nudging them towards the group stuff. Yeah. I'm like, it's different, but I don't want to say it's better, but in my opinion,
it is. Great. I mean, one-on-one guys, you're trading time for dollars, and you can kind of scale that with coaching. But oftentimes too, what I do, like I love to coach entrepreneurs. It's like sometimes I'm not even in the room; they're already teaching each other, different things. It's just like, hey, maybe I have something to say. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I really do think that too. I think there's a lot of coaches that kind of get unnerved. I think it's the perfectionism piece. Like they have to know all the answers. They have to know how to coach every single person. But like, the crowdsourcing is amazing. I mean, they have solutions that there's no way I could have even thought of. So,
and awesome. like you said, I mean, I learn from my students, my clients, just as much as they learn from me. And they say, "Oh, well, I didn't know that." Okay. But every now and then, I have to say something like, you guys kind of paid me. I should probably step in."
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for. Yeah. No, that's it. I love the work that you're doing. I love that you're bringing physician coaching to the forefront. I mean, I collect data on all my coaching clients. So like truly like burnout's reduced, resilience is improved, self-compassion is improved, job satisfaction is improved. Like coaching works better than anything else that we're doing. Yeah. And so I really think that if this was just like part of med school curriculum, trainee curriculum, and like this is just the normal mindset work that we did, it would be totally change the culture.
We need to have it, and we need to have it in the residency level, the medical school level. And we think it's like, there's too many physician coaches. Like we're like a small number in the grand scheme of physicians that are out there who have no clue.
Yeah.
They're still in the suck it up. You got to be a team player. There must be something wrong with you. You're a disruptive physician
and there's an
mindset.
Infinite need. Yeah, like once everyone has well-managed minds and there's no more burnout, okay, great, we can have that conversation. But there's an infinite need of support, right? So
right, you can't just solve it with a meditation app, and for me, it has to be from a physician because we've lived it, we've gone through it,
Yes,
so
absolutely.
We're trying to change things, hopefully. All righty.
One drop at a time. Thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah. I'll let you know when it's ready, and then you can shoot this out, and hopefully we can fill up your group coaching program.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay. Take care.
See you. Bye.
Hey, Dr. Mike here. I hope you're inspired by that interview. And if you aspire to become a coach or consultant yourself, I highly encourage you to check out my free on-demand masterclass, How to Become a Highly Paid In-Demand Physician Consultant or Coach. On the masterclass, I'll not only show you my story of how I've become a physician consultant for over 15 years, I'll also show you real-life case studies of physicians who are actively doing this now, either adding or replacing their current income as a doctor. To register for the masterclass, we'll leave a link in the show notes. I look forward to sharing you this important information today.